Where is this thing? Over here. Okay. Today's topic is self-esteem, humility, and pride.
I didn't even put that in the ad, humility. That's the word I wanted.
Humility, self-esteem, humility, and pride. And I want to quote a very great rabbi whose name was Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, not to be mistaken with Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, who is Rambam, but is Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman. And this rabbi lived in Spain in around the 1200s, so in the 13th century. And at an elderly age, he was forced into a disputation with a Christian priest. That was the way the Spanish monarchs, they tried to persuade their Jewish subjects that Christianity was a superior religion. So it would force a rabbi and a priest into a disputation. And as a product of the disputation, he wrote a book called The Disputation, which you can get in a Jewish bookstore. It's called The Disputation. There's also a movie which came out a couple of years ago, made by British TV, a documentary kind of movie, historical novel. They made The Disputation a movie, excellent movie. You get your hands on it. Shows the whole background, the historical background, and the debate between the rabbi and the priest. But because he won the disputation, the Ramban, at the age of 83, was forced into exile. Not really exile, because he moved to Israel. And because of his exile, he was forced to write a letter to his son. His son remained in Spain. And he wrote a letter to his son, which is called Igeret HaRamban, the letter of the Ramban, which is a very short, it's one page. But today, again, you can buy a book. It's called The Letter of the Ramban, which is a commentary. It's a letter plus the commentary. So it became a book, a thin book, The Letter of the Ramban. And it's an Ashkenazi custom, it's interesting, to read this letter every day of the month of Elul, which is the month before, prior to Rosh Hashanah. So to prepare oneself for Rosh Hashanah, a person should read that book. And Ramban, in his letter to his son, speaks of the quality of humility, which is better than every good thing. The quality of humility is better than every other good thing. We find the Torah itself tells us that Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, our master, our teacher, Moses, displayed a wide range of virtues. Yet only one of them was explicitly mentioned. The Bible tells us, Anav me'od mikol adam. He was humble from any other person. He was the most humble person around. And that's probably the reason why he didn't declare himself into being a god. He was humble enough to realize that he was still a human being. After everything, after all his prophecy, and Jewish belief is that Moses was the greatest prophet ever. And with all that, he retained his humility. Unlike some who say, you know what, I'm not just a prophet, I'm also, there's a joke of a rabbi and a priest who had a debate. And they started comparing notes. And the rabbi says, you know what, when I get older, I want to be a chief rabbi. And the priest said, when I get older, I want to be a pope. And the rabbi says, and then what? So what do you mean? What's and then what? I can't be God, can I? So, well, one of our boys, he became God. So,
I missed the last part. What did you say?
One of our boys became a God.
Oh.
So, but that's a joke. There's a limit to how much a human can achieve. Moses had the humility to realize however great he was compared to God. Zero. Compared to God, who are we compared to God? So that's humility. We're going to talk about what is humility. But first of all, humility is a trait which is a very desirable trait. In Jewish philosophy, humility is a very desirable trait. Ramban Nachmanides discusses it. Rambam Maimonides says in his golden rule, in all the character traits, a person should try and be in the medium, called the happy medium. A person should not be too generous, a person should not be too miserly, a person should not be too sad, not to be too happy. A person should find a golden mean in the traits. With the exception of, he says, humility. When it comes to humility, a person's got to be on the extreme of humility. So humility is a very desirable trait, and the rabbis tell us also that humility is indispensable to the acquisition of prophecy. Because a prophet cannot become a prophet unless they are humble. Why? Because if I am receiving a message from God, I have to interpret the message based on God's perspective, not based on my perspective. I've got to submerge my ego, right? To explain a message, a person has to submerge their ego. Because normally what happens is, the message gets relayed through someone else's ego. For example, all of us read a newspaper. But depending on who we are, we interpret what we read, right? So if I have an interest in this subject, I'm anti-so-and-so, I'll interpret the story, I'll rearrange it. Similarly, a prophet with an ego will rearrange God's message to suit their own ego. Right? And therefore, a prophet cannot remain a prophet, a true prophet, unless they submerge their ego. They're just telling you what God says, without their ego getting in the way. So it's very important for prophecy to reach this level of humility. And Moses was a great prophet. Why? Why is he greater than any other prophet? Because his humility was greater than the other prophet. The rabbis say Moses' prophecy was prophecy through a clear glass. The other prophets' prophecy was prophecy through a frosted glass. What is the clear glass? What is the frosted glass? So clear glass is, he never had an ego. He was devoid of ego. So the messages went right through him. A person with the ego, the message goes through the person, and there's an ego, there's frosted glass. So the message gets distorted by the ego. For example, there's a CEO and then there's a manager, and you're under the manager. The CEO tells the manager to promote you, but the manager's got an ego. So the manager does it in a way which puts himself above you. He does it in a certain way, it arranges things. So the manager's ego distorts the message. For example, we just read in the Purim story, where Haman goes to the king in the middle of the night, and the king tells Haman, says, what do we do to a person the king wants to honor? Right? So Haman, the Bible tells us, thinks the king is talking about him. Who else will the king want to honor except me, he says to himself. So he gives him, he says, put him on the king's horse, make him wear the king's clothes, put the king's crown on his head. So the king says, now do exactly what you said to Mordechai. And don't you miss one single thing. Now why does the king have to add a warning over there? Because he knows, if it's not for him, he's going to delete a few things. If the message goes through someone else's ego, the message gets distorted. So the best message we can get from God is through a person without an ego. That was Moses, and that's why his prophecy is considered the best prophecy possible. Now it's interesting, if you look at the Webster Collegiate Dictionary, the 9th Webster Collegiate Dictionary, and you look under humility, what is the definition of humility? Now it's interesting. If you look at the Webster Dictionary under any other trait, you get a definition. Humility, what does he say? Not proud or haughty, not arrogant or assertive. Instead of defining what the trait is, it's an antonym. The Webster Dictionary tells you, what is humility? Not proud. Thank you very much. What is humility? Not proud. Or not arrogant. But what is it? So it's a negative. It's telling us a negative. What is humility? It seems that humility is something very hard to define. And in fact, many philosophers have debated this till today. Till today they're debating what is humility, what is true humility. The Webster Dictionary tells us other moral terms, for example, compassion, sympathetic consciousness of others, distress with a desire to alleviate, generosity, liberality in giving, but humble, not arrogant, not proud. Doesn't really define what humility is. So why is that? And the answer is because today we don't know. People are debating till today what is humility. So it's a very hard topic to define what is true humility. And there's a big discussion. Let's just discuss how slippery our topic is. It has often been said that a modest individual is required not only to refrain from boasting, but also to understate their true worth. So a person is modest, not just refrain from boasting, I'm the greatest, I'm this, like Muhammad Ali. What happened to Muhammad Ali? Poor fellow. I'm the greatest, right? I am the greatest. Right? Unfortunately, it backfires. The Talmud says, that Hashem, God, says about a proud person, this world ain't big enough for both of us. I'm just paraphrasing in cowboy terminology. This world ain't big enough for both of us. Because if he's the greatest, he doesn't leave room for me, God says. So he can't be the greatest. I'm the greatest. There's no other great person. So a person, that's a recipe for disaster. Pride is a recipe for disaster. A person coming on and saying, I am the greatest, it's a recipe for disaster. What happened to Superman? It's a recipe for disaster. Superman. It's a very big danger for a person to think they're super and they're the greatest. What is the saying? Pride comes before a fall. It's unfortunate, it's a tragedy. Before a fall, pride comes before a fall. That's the English proverb. And that's what always happens is a person gets so full of themselves, what happens normally, people just shy away from them. They can't take it anymore. You go to the person who wants to talk about himself. I'm the great, I'm this, I'm that, I did this, I did that. People say, you know what, that's enough. Can't take it anymore. A person's full of themselves, it's called. Be full of oneself. King Solomon cautions, let another praise you and not your own lips. Let someone else praise you, not yourself. Now the halacha is by lashon hara, by speaking gossip about someone. Not to praise someone in front of them. Not to cause praise in front of someone else. Why? Because it may make them big-headed. So it always says, say a little of the praise of someone in front of them. Don't say the whole praise. It causes them to be big-headed. It's very important not to exaggerate someone's praise or just go on about someone's praise. We see this in the Torah. The Torah says Bilam, who was a non-Jewish prophet, one of the non-Jewish prophets, a great prophet, he tried to curse the Jewish people. Right? Remember that? It's in the book of Numbers. In Numbers, in the 4th book of the Bible, it says he tried to curse the Jewish people. He wasn't successful. What happens? He starts blessing them instead. The rabbis say in the Talmud, those blessings were like a curse. Why? Because when the Jews heard such praises, they said, here we are, Moses is always rebuking us. He's always putting us down. We're no good, and we're Amka She'oref, we're stiff-necked people. He's always putting us down. Here's Bilam the prophet telling us the truth. Finally, he tells us we're great. We went to their heads. The next day they're sinning. So it shows by praising someone, you cause their downfall. The person starts thinking they're great. They're not so great. It's very dangerous.
But wouldn't Bilam be considered a person? I know the story, but wouldn't he be considered a person of ultimate humility because he didn't let his own feelings interrupt what he had to say to them? His feelings were hatred towards them, but he wound up praising them.
Well, that's what the rabbis say. The rabbis say, don't think that it was done with a good heart. Those praises ultimately cause their downfall. Because even when you're praising someone, you don't tell them the whole praise. He should have couched his language. Like if the prophet is praising the Jewish people, it's done in a much simpler way. Instead of really going overboard, he went overboard. He wanted to praise them to cause them to be proud. He wanted to cause their pride and their downfall. So he did praise them, but through his ego. That's why Moses was a greater prophet. Bilam really diverted the message.
But I thought Bilam wanted to curse him. But wasn't the words he said, the words Hashem put in his mouth?
God put the words in his mouth. What does that mean? Through the medium of prophecy. But his ego is involved. We said the prophecy goes through someone's ego. So he twisted and changed and chopped and changed, whatever he wanted. Yes.
If Moses is putting people down, does that show him to be humble?
It depends. If he's saying what God says,
what God says?
Yeah, that's right. He's a prophet. So that's his message.
I thought he seems to be a humble person, doesn't he? Sort of put on this down a little.
You're right. Unless he's a prophet, he's saying it's just a vehicle. A prophet is a vehicle. The trouble is, a prophet with an ego, the vehicle, the vessel is clouded. I heard a story. There was a rabbi who got stuck in the Lincoln Tunnel. It's a true story. He was driving his car. It's called a rabbi car. The rabbi car is like 15 years old. He's driving it and got stuck in the Lincoln Tunnel. What happens? They tow him out. He caused a big traffic jam. Eventually they tow him out, take him to a garage, and it was a part which cost $5. It's called the fuel filter. His fuel filter got clogged. Fuel wouldn't go through the engine. That's exactly what prophecy is. The prophecy is going through the person. If the filter, which is the ego, is clogged, it doesn't go through. If the filter is clouded, it doesn't really go through properly. So if we have good prophecy, it's got to be a clear filter. The person's ego has got to be clear. Okay, we'll continue, because this is a hard subject. So a person, it's desired that a person understates their true worth. Where do we see this? The Talmud says a rabbi can lie about three things. Not only can lie, but should lie about three things. What are the three things? Interesting. Number one is how much they know. If the person asks them, how much do you know? And the rabbi knows everything, you should say, I only know a little bit. He's allowed to lie about how much they know. There's a famous story. There was a great rabbi in the last century called the Rogatchover. The Rogatchover was a genius. Similar to Einstein, but in the Jewish sense, in learning Talmud. Genius, total genius. He never went for a haircut. His hair was disheveled, never had time for a haircut. And other rabbis were scared to speak to him. Why? He would ask them questions and then say, this guy doesn't know anything.
What?
He would ask them questions and they wouldn't know the answer. It says Rav Aaron Cutler, who is the founder of Lakewood Yeshiva, one of the greatest rabbis of the generation, went to see him and he says, what do you do? He was scared to say he's a rabbi. He said, I'm a farmer. So he asked him questions and he said, you know, you're not bad for a farmer. For a farmer, you're not bad. But he was a genius. So they asked him, he was once on a train, and a little kid came up to him. He said, Rabbi, he says, how much of Talmud do you know? He said, half. So which half? Any half you want. He started off, he tried his best to say, half. So the rabbi can say a lie about his learning. He can say a lie about his host. Now it's interesting, in those days, his host, he goes to be a guest in someone's house. Now it's interesting, if you look at the perspective of today and those days, the laws of charity start off with the obligation on the giver, and they end off with the obligations on the taker. One of the obligations of the taker is not to take unless it's really necessary. The obligation of the taker is, we think charity is you have to give. Charity is also not taking. A person who takes without need, the Talmud says, eventually will need it. Right? And a person who doesn't take when they need, eventually God will bless them that they'll never have to take. Okay, so taking, a person's got to think carefully before they stretch out their hand and say, I need, give me charity. It's better not to take. A person's got to really think it over through if they really need it or not really need it. There's two-way street. Similarly, a guest going to someone's house. Interesting. You go to someone's house, the food is great. And you know there are 20 other people looking for places to go. Now if you tell them the food was great, 20 other people are going to go to that person. Say, can I come over? Can I come over? Can I come over? So you're allowed to say the food was not so great. Why? To protect the person you went to. So for example, a person comes to someone and says, give me a big donation. The guy gave him a big donation. He goes to all his friends and says, you know what? That guy gives big donations. Everyone go to him. You're going to ruin the person. So in a situation like that, you're allowed to say, he didn't give me a big donation. Why? To protect that person. It says, you'll find that today it's different. Today people come after anyone. They don't care about that person's welfare. They hear this person gave charity, they'll come and run after him. In those days it wasn't like that. In those days the rabbis were very careful who they went to. Before they would go to someone, they would find out if he could afford to give. So that's number two. Number three is one's marital affairs. One's marital affairs is nobody's business. The rabbi is allowed to lie about his marital affairs. In terms of his relationships with his wife, not allowed to. Okay. So we see a person is allowed to understate. How much do you know? Be modest. Don't boast about how much a person knows. Understate it. Okay, let's continue. So a person has to understate what they know. There's an interesting story. There was a great rabbi called Rabbi Akiva Eger. Have you heard of him? Rabbi Akiva Eger, very famous rabbi. Akiva Eger. Eger.
The second, I know Akiva.
Akiva was the original. He was 2,000 years ago, Rabbi Akiva. But in the last 3 centuries, about 1700s, Rabbi Akiva Eger, he wrote a commentary on the whole of the Talmud. Genius. His daughter marries another great rabbi, the Khatam Sofer. Another great rabbi in, where was he? In Khatam Sofer. In Hungary. Pressburg, Hungary.
That would be Czechoslovakia.
Hungary. Yeah? Pressburg. Maybe it moved because they were always fighting, these guys. It could have been Hungarian Empire. So it was Hungary, Austro-Hungarian Empire. Pressburg. So he was the chief rabbi of Pressburg. He marries the daughter of Rabbi Akiva Eger, and they're going together in the carriage to the wedding. They're both together in the carriage. In those days, it was customary, when the rabbi entered with a carriage, they would unhitch the horses, and the people would pull the carriage out of honor or respect to the rabbi. So what happens? The people unhitch the horses, they pull the carriage. He gets off and he says, "Let me join in the mitzvah of pulling the other rabbi." Gets off one end. The other rabbi has the same idea. I'm gonna pull the other rabbi. He gets off the other side. They both get off the carriage from two different doors. In the end, the carriage gets there. They open the doors. Where's the rabbis? They're both laughing. Why? They both have the same idea. They're going to pull the other one. That's humility. That's humility. That's important. The 18th century rabbi, Rabbi Akiva Eger, him and another great rabbi spent a Shabbat together in the lodging house. The two great rabbis were together in the hotel. Now a person walks in and he says, "Where is the great rabbi?" So he says, "The great rabbi stepped out for a minute." The other rabbi wasn't there. So instead of saying, "Here I am," says, the other one is over here. So that's humility. Now, what is the definition given by Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto? Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, in the 17th century in Italy, wrote a book called The Path of the Just, which I quote all the time, one of my favorite books. You got in English, The Path of the Just. He says, defines humility. A man of understanding will, upon reflection, realize there is no justification for pride or vainglory, even if the person was privileged to become learned. A man of understanding who has acquired more knowledge than the average person has accomplished nothing more than what his nature impelled him to do. Because why am I bragging? That's my nature. I'm studious by nature. So now I'm going to brag because I'm studious by nature. Because I don't have ADD, I'm going to brag about it. Whatever good a man possesses is due to divine grace, according to him. I'm a great inventor. God gave me the ability. So why am I going to brag? A person should be grateful to God who has been gracious to him, and for that reason be humbled. So he says, however great a person is, this is like Moses. Moses was great, but he realized, where does his greatness come from? So in other words, we have to realize we have a partnership. We achieved, on the other hand, who gave us the ability to achieve? Hashem. If Hashem gave us the ability to achieve, why am I going to get proud? I achieved, but where did it all come from? Where did the ability come from? Yes?
I mean, I wonder if I can express this clearly. People who are incredibly humble are actually annoying. You compliment someone on something and you deserve it, and instead of saying thank you by doing what you're saying, they're like, in a way, you're just going to keep going on and on and on. You're feeding their ego. Instead of just accepting the compliment for yes, you're good at this, or yes, you're great at that, thank you. Oh, no. What's your reaction going to be? You're going to just keep piling this on.
Very good. A good question.
The result is that you're feeding their ego even more.
It's a very good question. Very good question. And the answer is obviously it depends on what their intentions are. If their intentions are to build up their own ego, then they're egotistic. If their intention is, I'm not that, you don't know me properly. And the truth is, that's what the person's saying. That's humility. But we haven't got there yet. Okay. We're still working towards the end. What is humility?
All right.
Because there's a fascinating, the last Mishnah in Sota has constituted a source of puzzlement. And the Mishnah states like this. It says, when Rabbi Judah the Prince, who is the editor of the Mishnah, we have the Mishnah which is 2,000 years old. Rabbi Judah the Prince was the editor of the Mishnah, 100 CE, just after the destruction of the second temple, 100 CE. It says, when he died, humility died with him. When Rabbi Judah the Prince died, humility died with him. What happens? Rabbi Yosef stands up. Wrong! I'm still here. The rabbis are saying, when Rabbi Judah the Prince died, humility died. Rabbi Yosef said, no, I'm still around. Humility is still alive, I'm still here. What's that? Is that modesty? Is that humility? So that tells us a very important idea. True humility is knowing one's strengths, knowing the truth. Pride and ego is falsehood. Big difference. Because we all know that we need self-esteem. Right? What is self-esteem? Is self-esteem good or bad? Self-esteem is very, very important, critical. There's many books written by one of the great rabbis of our time, is Rabbi Abraham Twersky, who happens also to be a great psychiatrist. He's the head of what's called the Gateway Rehabilitation Center, which is a very advanced clinic for rehab from drug abuse.
How do you spell that name?
The Gateway, Twersky, Twerski. Twersky, Abraham Twersky.
Is this the big guy that's writing?
Yes.
Same one who
Twersky.
writes all the books.
Yes. He wrote about 60 books.
Yeah.
And what he says is, every single problem in a human being can be traced to lack of self-esteem. Self-esteem. That's all he talks about all the time. Self-esteem.
It's not the opposite of humble.
Huh?
It's not the opposite of humble.
Very good. Excellent.
Not the opposite.
Self-esteem is not the opposite of humility.
I think it may be.
It's the same thing.
I don't agree.
Well, let me just define. Let's define it. Let's go back to the story. The story is, Rabbi Judah the prince dies. The rabbis say, no more humility in the world. Rabbi Joseph stands up and he says, wrong, I am still here. Is he humble or not humble? He says, I'm humble. So the answer is, if you're saying a fact, that's truth. If it's truth, it's not going to your head, it's true. I know my strengths. It's very important for a person to know their strengths. That is humility and that is self-esteem. Self-esteem is knowing the truth about the person. Knowing one's strengths. Is it forbidden for a person to know their strengths? No. It's a very important idea that we should know our strengths. Because if we don't know our strengths, what happens? Depression. I'm not good at this, I'm not good at this, I'm not good at this, I'm nothing. I'm a zero. What is a zero going to accomplish in their lives? Another big fat zero. It's very important for a person to know their strengths. That is not pride, because that's truth.
I just finished a book now where God might be zero.
That's a mathematical equation. That's a mathematical problem.
And occasionally he switches to infinity.
Right. That's right. God is here and he's not here. That's why the rabbis talk about God as Ein, nothing, Sof.
Wait, it's a little...
No end. No end.
I say again, I'm missing what you're saying.
The rabbis the Kabbalists call God Ein, Sof. No end. No infinity. No end.
Yeah.
On the one hand, nothing. On the one hand, infinity. No infinity.
Mystical thought.
It's mystical thought.
With zero and infinity.
That's right. Exactly. You look around, he's nowhere, and yet he's everywhere.
Right.
He's nowhere and everywhere at the same time. There's zero and infinity at the same time. It's paradoxical.
Where does self-esteem end and pride?
Very good question. Okay, that's exactly. Let's continue a bit more. So what we tried to say is, there's pride, which is falsehood. Let's try and give a story. There's a beautiful story. The story is the story of David and Bathsheba. I'm sure you've heard of the story. It became a movie, Cecil D. DeMille, 40 years ago, about David and Bathsheba. And David, what happens? David is the rabbis say he was on his roof, where he was hunting a bird with his arrow. The arrow goes, flies through, smashes the window in the next house over. Happens to be a beautiful woman taking a shower at that time. Looks through, wow, gorgeous. Who is this woman? Uriah's wife. Okay. Uriah is in the war. Okay. Uriah comes home, calls him home. He says, Uriah, go back to your wife. Uriah says, I can't. My master Yoav, who is the general at that time, is busy in the field fighting a battle. How can I go back and have relations with my wife when my troops and my general, my master, is in the field? He disobeys the king's order. He stays outside the king's palace guarding the king that night. David says, go back to the war. He sends a message to the general, make sure this man is placed in the front of battle. Uriah goes back, front of battle, gets killed. David goes and takes his wife. Now, legal, not legal. What's the story? The rabbis say, number one, we have to realize Uriah committed treason on two accounts. Number one, the king says, go back to your wife. King is the king. You don't disobey the king's orders. Number two, he says, my master Yoav is in the fields with the soldiers. His master, you're talking to the king. That's treason. So the rabbis say Uriah was liable death penalty twice. David could have taken him to court and killed him. He didn't. He put him in the battle and he died. But since David had bad intentions, God sends the prophet Nathan to rebuke David. He goes to David, and by the way, we learn from here how to rebuke someone. The worst way to rebuke someone is to tell them off. You, so-and-so, you did this and this and this. The best way to rebuke someone is tell them a story. And let them figure out what you're trying to get to. So Nathan the prophet comes to David and tells him a story. There was a rich man and a poor man. The rich man had many sheep and many cattle. The poor man only had one cow. The rich man had a guest, and the rich man says to himself, he says, why should I waste one of my cattle on my guest? I'll take the poor man's cow. Takes the poor man's cow and he gives it to his guest. When David heard this story, he got furious. He said, that rich man, I'll kill him. He said, why? He took away the livelihood of the poor man. The poor man's going to die of starvation. That's all he had. So Nathan the prophet says, you are the rich man. That hit home. He says, you're right. I didn't realize. You said exactly the truth. I've sinned. Repents, cries, pleads with God. And we see the greatness of David. He was a king. He could have denied it, could have killed the prophet, which most kings would have done. He accepts it. But the story does not match the crime. The Rambam points out the story that he told him does not match the crime. Why? Who did the rich man take the poor man's sheep for? For his guest. Who did David take his Bathsheba for? Himself. So that's where we see the difference between humility and pride. Humility is, I know what I'm doing. Exactly truth. Pride is when there's an element of falsehood. A person comes on and says, you know what, I'm not doing it for myself. I'm doing it for something else. King David is saying, I'm not doing it for myself. I'm not taking it for myself. I'm taking it for my guest. Who's my guest? Someone else. I'm taking it for herself. I'm taking it to elevate her. Why is she wasted on that such a low life? I can take her, I can make her a queen. But that's pride, that's falsehood. All that is falsehood. So there's a difference between pride and humility. Humility is truth, and pride is falsehood. Let me just go a bit further. The young man was upset. He came to the rabbi. He says, I can't win. Sometimes I feel inadequate, unable to cope. Other times I feel more in control. I look down on others. And this is a human problem. When things are going bad, we can't cope. Depression. When things are going well and we're doing very well, we look down upon other people. Pride. So we flip backwards and forwards. Usually most people flip backwards and forwards. From pride, we go from pride to depression, back to pride to depression, back to pride to depression. How do I get this? How do we stay in the middle? Isn't there a happy medium where I can be confident without being egotistic? Unfortunately, that happy medium is not so easily attained. On the one hand, pride is loathsome. As we said before, God says to a person who's proud, this world ain't big enough for both of us. Talmud says in Sota. Pride is a beautiful idea. We see in the Torah, and Torah says, Jacob has a vision. What was Jacob's vision? A ladder. He sees a ladder going up to heaven. And what's on the ladder? Angels. Where are the angels going? Up and down. Okay, what's going on? What's the angels going up and down? So that's a beautiful idea. The gematria, in Hebrew, every letter has got a numerical value. The gematria of the word sulam, which is a ladder, sulam is a ladder, has the same numerical value as the word mammon, which is money, and the word oni, which is poverty. Money, poverty, and ladder are the same numerical value. What's going on? So the rabbis tell us what he really saw was the future of two great people. Both were tremendously wealthy. Moses and Moses' cousin Korach. Moses used his money for good. Korach, the money went to his head, and tremendously proud. So both are equal. And the ladder can be the vehicle which was used, one to go up, one to go down. The same vehicle can be used to people. Two great geniuses. One can use their The genius can go to the head and use it to go down. Pride. We find Haman. What caused the downfall of Haman? Haman says, whatever I have, he had everything. Whatever I have is worth nothing when I see the Jew Mordechai not bowing down to me. Just one small thing causes destruction. One small thing. It's very important for a person not to let these things go to a person's head. Money can lead to pride. Our natural desire to feel good about ourselves and pride of our achievements needs to be kept within limits, because left unchecked it can lead to pride. Pride is falsehood. Someone's going to know their strengths. Falsehood. False. Lack of self-esteem blocks many avenues of growth and achievement. We need self-esteem. Many people have sacrificed their dreams because they don't have confidence in themselves. We have to have confidence in ourselves. We have to know what our strong points are. And unfortunately, the classic weapon against pride has been self-criticism. But if a person doesn't have any self-esteem, you criticize them, they're demolished. Before we can even attack pride, we have to know our strengths. Before we can even get to the level of attacking pride, we have to know our strengths. You can't attack pride without building up something in its place. If you demolish the whole person, there's nothing left. We have to build up self-esteem. The classic approach is the awareness of one's assets. Number one, we have to know our assets. And number two, we have to know who gave us the assets. And if a person knows their assets, that's self-esteem. A person knows who gave them their assets, that's humility. What is true humility? So there's three levels. There's pride, which is falsehood. There's self-esteem, which is knowing one's assets. And humility is knowing where the assets came from. That's true humility. Knowing where the assets came from. So a person knows, I have these assets, I have these assets, that's not humility. Unless they know, I didn't cause myself to have these assets. God gave me them.
Self-esteem really has nothing to do with what we do. Every time you feel fulfilled, you realize it's God that permitted it.
Exactly. That's humility. Humility is the realization that it was God behind me.
But you're allowed the self-esteem.
Yes, you have to have it.
Justified and
yes,
right.
We need it. We need it. We need it. Human beings need self-esteem. We all need self-esteem. We have to know this is the...
But you're suggesting that any self-esteem which is indulged in, I accomplished, is false and unworthy.
It's a lower level, put it that way. There's three levels.
Well, that's pride.
It's not pride. It's not pride. It's not pride. It's not pride.
It's not pride.
It's not pride. I don't consider it pride. But it's not a level of humility which we have to try and achieve. There's three levels. There's pride, which is false. Self-esteem is true. It's true. But there's no element of saying it was all... The person just saying it's me, 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 me. So instead of saying it was God, it was me. And there's an element of falsehood over there because you're leaving out God from the equation.
Does self-esteem permit ego? What?
Okay, there's three things. There's three things. There's three things over here.
Sorry.
There's the id, the ego, and the superego.
Right.
The id is the bad.
The id is the what?
The bad. The bad side.
The drive.
The drive. The superego is the good side.
The conscience.
And the ego is who we are.
Right.
The ego is what?
Is we, in the middle. Who the person is the ego. I mean, this is very simplistically. The rabbis talk about it in terms of the Yetzer HaTov, the good inclination, which is the superego equivalent, the Yetzer Hara, which is the id equivalent, and the person themselves in the middle, who's making decisions based on these two, pulling in both directions. Obviously, it's much more complicated because they're all intrinsic parts of us. It's not like there's three things, there's only one thing, but they're all embedded in each other. So the classic approach is you have to have self-esteem. You have to know your strengths. But be humble at the same time and say, even though I have these strengths, where do the strengths come from? That's humility. Whereas pride is false, totally falsehood. Is embellishing on one's own abilities. Okay. So I think we have a little bit of explanation over here. I just want to go into one other point. And we said that healthy self-esteem is very important. But how does a person get healthy self-esteem? Number one, self-discipline in two areas. The area where a person knows their ability to perform necessary tasks, to perform adequately in this world. So I can perform adequately in this world, I can maintain myself in this world, necessary for self-esteem. And how does a person do that? Discipline. Not to overspend at the bank, not to do this, and not to do that, not to break the law. Discipline gives a person self-esteem. Because I can maintain myself. I can survive. Gives a person self-esteem. Number 2, the ability to maintain intimate relationships with others. To get healthy self-esteem, a person has to have the ability to maintain intimate relationships with others. A person who's a loner, who cannot maintain relationships with others, can never develop healthy self-esteem. You have to be able to maintain friendships. Number 3, you have to realize that man is made up of 4 different areas. Person is made up of 4 different areas. The physical, the body. The emotional, which is part of the mind. It's the emotional part of the mind. The mental, which is the rational part of the mind. And number 4 is the spiritual. This is very simplistic again. There are 4 parts to a person. Physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. As we grow, we've got to learn to orchestrate the system. Right? Person's growing, the body's growing, the mind is growing, emotions are growing. We have to know how to balance the system. All the troubles in teen years are caused mainly because they don't know how to balance the system. They're growing in this area, they don't know how to cope, they don't know how to balance it. Managing the system is not an easy task. And for self-esteem, we have to know how to manage the system. Emotionally, we got to maintain, develop intimate relationships. We find the word in Hebrew for feeling is regesh. Regesh is feeling, and gesher is a bridge. They have the same letters. Regesh is feeling. Feelings are a bridge to other people. We have to know how to use the emotions to bridge the gap with other people.
What's the word for bridge in Hebrew?
Gesher. Gesher is a bridge. Regesh is feelings. Feelings are a bridge to other people. Mentally, self-esteem is a product of staying alert, open-minded, learning from others, creative. Mentally, self-esteem, staying creative, staying alert. It takes discipline to concentrate and learn. The fact that you're all here today is discipline, tremendous discipline to be here, to want to learn. That produces self-esteem. A byproduct of that is self-esteem. I feel good because my mind is working. The worst thing to do is a person whose mind doesn't work. Mind is left to rot. No self-esteem. They have no purpose in the world. Yes.
I hope I'm not interrupting him properly, but there's a question in my mind. Of the 4 things you gave us, I guess soul,
physical, mental, emotional,
physical,
spiritual,
and spiritual. Mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. And you also indicate that self-esteem is okay if you have humility, right? But implicit in the word humility is the effect that there's a God in this world, so you can turn to him and say thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The problem I have in America today is this is an unbelievably secular society.
You're right. At the same time, the question over here is America's an unbelievably secular society. You know, it's interesting. Statistics are, there was a U.S. News and World Report, I think it was, or Time, one of the two. They did a survey amongst Americans and they said 90% of Americans believe in God.
Yeah.
Whereas in Europe, we have official state religions, 70% believe in God. This country is the most religious country in the world.
Yeah, they're all good at saying it, but I don't know.
Okay, you're right. But at least they say it.
Yeah.
Other countries would say, no, there's no God.
But I think we want to be aware that one of this important issue of humility
That's right.
is contingent upon a God.
100%.
How do I have this wonderful self-esteem, and I'm always saying, gee, thank you, Lord.
That's
but if
good.
I don't believe in God or have a feeling
That's
for
right.
it,
You're
it's
right.
a lot of junk.
100%.
It's utter pride.
100%. 100%.
Right, you got to believe in God.
That's right. To believe in God, that's the bottom line for humility. A person without belief in God cannot be humble.
Right.
Because there's no one else. It's just me.
No one to thank.
It's me. I did this. Yes.
What about people like the Dalai Lama? He
Right.
doesn't believe in God.
He believes in God.
He's considered humble.
Sure, he believes in God. Sure, they believe in God. They believe in Buddha, whatever it is, but they're Buddha. They believe in him. The ones who really know don't believe in the actual Buddha. They believe in the soul, the spiritual side behind it. The ones who really know, if you look at the Rambam, who talks about the evolution of paganism, it says first everyone believed in God, then they believed in the manifestations But the person who really knows, I'm sure the Dalai Lama is on the level where he knows the manifestation is zero. It's the one behind it. They know. For sure he knows. Okay. Spiritually, self-esteem is maintaining connection with God. Self-esteem, spiritual self-esteem, is maintaining. So emotionally, a person's got to maintain self-esteem by connecting with other people. Mentally, a person has got to maintain an active mind. And spiritually, a person's got to maintain a relationship with God. And that's the source. All these are sources of self-esteem. Okay, so let's conclude with our definition. We said that pride is falsehood. Basically, falsehood is saying I am something which I am not. That's pride. I am the greatest, and I'm not the greatest. I mean, I'm just one. Maybe I'm great in certain areas. I'm not the greatest. I can't be the greatest in everything. Just the fact that we're human beings means we're limited straight away, automatically. The fact that there's 6 billion or so human beings in the world means I'm just 1 out of 6 billion. I can't be the greatest. I can't own everything. Even the richest person alive cannot own everything. Resources. Look at the resources. So he can't be the greatest. So it already gives a person something. So that's pride. That's falsehood. A person says, I'm the greatest. That's falsehood. Number 2, self-esteem is very fundamental, is knowing one's strengths. It's very important we know our strengths. But just knowing our strengths without giving any gratitude to God,
yes, it's phony.
It's also a bit phony. So that's the second level. The highest level is humility, which is, I know my strengths, but I know where the source of the strengths are. So even though I have the strengths, I've got to thank God for those strengths. The person will never get proud then.
Person will
never become proud if they know the source is not me, it's God. Okay, we'll stop here. Any questions? Let's go ahead.